Previously on Casually Comics, we looked at part 1 of the 2 Owlman episodes of Brave and the Bold. We were looking at Deep Cover for Batman. I'll of course link all of that down below. And now we're gonna look at part 2, Game Over for Owlman. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and there's lots to discuss, so let's get to it.
Welcome home, Dark Knight.
Deep Cover for Batman featured Batman having to go over to the alternate villainous Earth to stop it from invading the main Earth. And in the process, he met and allied with Red Hood and helped him overthrow the Injustice Syndicate. Upon returning to Earth, he found that he was wanted. Posters everywhere. It had a very strong Bruce Wayne fugitive vibe. Although Batman being wanted is just a thing that happens to him sometimes. It's one of the dangers of being a vigilante. Now, the reason in this story this is happening is because it's been 3 weeks since he left, and it looks like his counterpart was able to escape and cause some damage in that time. This is meant to showcase that moving through dimensions means that time moves differently. They're establishing this for later on, even though it will work the opposite way from how it works here when it's being set up. Game Over for Owlman was the 13th episode of Batman the Brave and the Bold of the first season, originally airing March 6th, 2009. Once more, it was written by Joseph Kerr, but this time was directed by Ben Jones. And also last time lots of you made jokes about that name, Joseph Kerr. Joker. That's why the Joker comes out so well in these episodes. Now in the episode, Batman is quick to guess that his doppelganger must have broken out, and that he's been going on a crime spree. And we quickly see Owlman as Batman robbing a bank. The costume he's wearing is the first Batman costume from the Golden Age, from Detective Comics 27 back in 1939. Complete with purple gloves, which didn't last long. He also strikes the pose from when Batman details his origin in Batman #1, which Bob Kane traced from a Tarzan image. Not only is this a nice callback, but it helps to make the Batmen visually distinct. You have the longer ears, the gloves, allows them to give a bit more of a menacing air to Owlman as well.
And since you're alive, that means you defeated my friends and freed my enemies. Impressive.
This is in lieu of the different color schemes utilized in part 1. Now, even if one doesn't know what's being referenced with the costume in this episode, it's still fun, and it still helps to differentiate them. Now, since we're looking at Owlman, let's briefly talk about him. If you happen upon a wiki for this episode, it will quickly tell you that Owlman is Thomas Wayne Jr. Some of them also say younger brother to Bruce Wayne, so let's discuss this. It's worth noting that none of that is mentioned in this episode. And given the fact that everyone has the same voice actors in these episodes, and the rest of the characters are flips on the same character, one could make the argument that this is a dark Bruce.
Owlman's a parallel me.
The reason for thinking that it's Thomas Wayne Jr. is because by this point in continuity, that is what would have been established as the main backstory. When the crime syndicate Owlman in his hat debuted in Justice League of America 29, 1964, he had no backstory. He wasn't given the identity of Thomas Wayne Jr. until post-crisis in the story JLA Earth 2 by Grant Morrison. This in the year 2000. And then those versions of the characters would carry forward into events like 52 and Trinity. And there would be some elements of the pre-crisis that would be brought forward into them. But the identities would largely be coming from the JLA Earth 2. That book, it seems like, could be referencing Bruce's older brother from pre-crisis on Infinite Earths, the Boomerang Killer, from World's Finest 223 in 1974. In a story by Bob, I'll throw can out the window Haney. In that, it was revealed that Bruce had an older brother who had been hit by a car as a baby and had caused brain damage. And as a result, the Waynes had him institutionalized because the doctors had told them that he was going to be a danger to society. They never got a chance to tell Bruce this because they were murdered in front of him in an alley. Thomas later escaped and was manipulated into becoming an assassin called the Boomerang Killer. He later died saving Bruce after Dead Man had for a time stolen his body. It was off the rails. Now, the Thomas Wayne Jr. of JLA Earth 2 was also the older brother of Bruce and sole survivor, or so he thought, of his family's murder. This inspired him not to fight crime, but to become the dominant criminal, to control criminals. In most versions you'll find of the character, he is the older brother. The idea of him being a younger brother appeared in the New 52 canon in the Court of Owls storyline, where Lincoln March was claiming that he was Bruce Wayne's long-lost younger brother. That was in 2012. The New 52 Earth 3 stuff would have Thomas again as the elder brother. So I'm not sure where the wiki is getting the younger brother element from. I don't remember that as being part of Trinity. They seem to have the same backstories as from before, but as always, let me know if I'm missing anything. Narratively, it's a lot easier if he's the older brother to explain away why Bruce didn't know about him. Still, older or younger. By 2009, Thomas Wayne Jr. was the established identity of Owlman. So for some, it may just be a safe assumption. And some elements of the plot, such as how him and Batman don't entirely predict each other's movements, would align with them being different people. Either way, in terms of this episode, it's fun. One thing to note in this episode is how quickly all Batman's friends believe he turned evil.
And to think, all those lectures you gave me about staying on the straight and narrow.
I know it was 3 weeks, but still, no Christmas cards for anybody. With his allies not willing to listen, Batman ends up finding help from an unlikely source.
Hold the trolley. I don't want to fight. I want to be partners.
This moment, this Joker reveal, works on a few levels. If one was watching Batman the Brave and the Bold as it aired, this was the first appearance of the Joker on this show. So this is his big reveal, a team-up episode. This was the first time showing his look and his vibe. So this adds another layer to his face being hidden in part 1, Deep Cover for Batman. However, what's clever about this is it also works out of order, since the idea of Batman and Joker being a reluctant team is one that is oft-times revisited. And it was something that was foreshadowed and set up in part 1.
Whoever he is, I hope my counterpart on your world will have a chance to repay you.
Somehow that seems unlikely.
So as a result, this works whatever order you watch it in. There's just added layers depending upon how you're coming to it. This sequence also adds gravitas to the restrained laugh Jeff Bennett, who voiced the Joker in this series, does for Red Hood in part 1 versus the more unhinged one he gives the Joker. Batman is willing to entertain the idea of the two of them working together because he feels it'll add an unknown factor that could tip the odds in his favor. And this is where some of the most fun moments in the episode come from.
The real one will move. He always does.
There also seems to be a reference when he summons the Batmobile to him where he tells it to stop. That seems to be a Batman 89 reference. When he tells the Batmobile to stop when he's summoning it for him and Vicky.
Stop.
The Joker in this series is straddling the line between being dangerous and fun. It's not highlighted as often as some other depictions, but it is there. The Joker, upon arriving at the Batcave, is thrilled to see how much real estate his trophies take up.
Oh, an entire wing pour moi? I knew you cared.
All the flashes that are showing the Joker reminiscing about the good times of Death Traps, those are references to Death Traps from Batman 66, the series with Adam West and Burt Ward. All those things happened. The giant key duplicator is from The Impractical Joker, the electric chair connected to a slot machine is from The Joker Goes to School, and the giant clam is from The Joker's Hard Times. They're real quick snippets, but it's fun that they're actual references. Batman has good cause to be concerned about Owlman because he's hacked into his computer, and that means he's found his contingency plans for neutralizing all his friends. You know, usual friend things. He keeps detailed notes just in case. You never know.
Owlman knows every hero's weakness.
Ah, I'm healthy.
This is a reference to the Tower of Babel storyline, which originally ran from JLA 43 to 46, this in the year 2000. In this arc, Ra's al Ghul tries to take over the world, and in order to help with this, he uses Batman's contingency plans for taking out the rest of the Justice League. They would later adapt this into the movie Justice League Doom in 2012, which I'll never forget because Bruce's plan to take out Green Lantern in that was to lower his self-esteem.
Hal, listen to me. However it looks, this wasn't your fault.
Whose fault was it then?
This movie also has most of the DCAU voice cast returning in their roles, so that's fun. But before that, we had this version in Brave and the Bold, this speedrun adaptation. With the heroes neutralized, it's up to Batman and the Joker to stop Owlman and the villains he's recruited. The monologues they give to Owlman in this, they're pretty good. This episode does a good job of highlighting the difference between Owlman and Batman. It's also fascinating to think about how much more effective Owlman is at being bad on this Earth than Batman was at being good on his Earth. I mean, ultimately, yes, he did win, but he wasn't able to hide his identity the same way that Owlman has here. Wait a minute, does that mean that Owlman is better friends with the Injustice Syndicate than Batman is with these Justice League characters? That's something to think about, because on the villainous Earth, they were very quick to notice that Owlman wasn't right.
I know Owlman. Owlman is a friend of mine. You're no Owlman.
Whereas on this Earth, everybody was very quick to buy into the idea that he would just snap. Bruce needs to think about some things. Now, this team up does not work out because the Joker is swayed over to Owlman's side because he's got a pre-prep death trap.
Oh, Bad Buddy, we shared some laughs. And I really gave the hero thing the old clown college try. But it's just not me.
However, Batman had anticipated that he would be betrayed, as the Joker had pretty much told him as much earlier on. So he was able to snag the phase oscillator and go across the multiverse and recruit different Batmen. And that's why they established that time moves differently, because that's how he was able to go get so many. They say it was weeks, even though, again, at the beginning, it worked in the reverse fashion, but still, it was foreshadowed. Batman comes back having summoned multiple Batmen from across the multiverse to aid him. And he's got quite the eclectic bunch. I was able to identify most, but not some. You can help me out. We have the Bat Hulk. This Batman Batman hails from the Brave and the Bold 68 from the year 1966 and the story Alias the Bat Hulk from a team up with Metamorpho. It's a Bob Haney story, so you know it gets wild. Riddler, Joker, and Penguin have all teamed up. The year is 1966, so there's some synchronicity with the TV series, and that's why you're seeing certain villain team-ups and the like. In trying to capture them in this, Batman is exposed to a gas of the Joker's devising that turns him into the Bat Hulk. Him and Metamorpho actually have to fight until he gets struck by lightning, which cures him. It must also be noted that this character does also look a little bit like the Bat creature from Batman 162. Batman is turned to a hulking thing a few times. We also see here this Batman with a huge head, and if you know sci-fi rules, you'll know that means he's from the far future. A likely contender for this one is Batman of 800,000 AD. He's from World's Finest 151 from the year 1965. The story, The Infinite Evolutions of Batman and Superman, written by Cary Bates and Edmund Hamilton. In that, Batman and Superman find an evolutionary accelerator, and Batman decides to test it on himself, as you do. He evolves himself by 800,000 years. He turns Superman into a caveman, and the two of them must fight. I'm open to other references though, because he doesn't really have powers in that, and his cowl is off, and he's not as tiny. But at the same time, his head is very swole with brains and cruelty. We have Vampire Batman of the Batman and Dracula trilogy, the first graphic novel being Red Rain, followed by Bloodstorm, and finally Crimson Mist, all by Doug Mentz with art by Kelly Jones. In that, Batman becomes a vampire to fight Dracula, which he has accomplished by the end of the first one, but the adventures continue, and the art just gets more and more gruesome each issue. This is an iconic look, and they still revisit it sometimes. We also have Captain Leatherwing. He's a pirate, and as Silver Age as this sounds, this is from the 90s and it's extra grimdark. This is from Detective Comics Annual number 7, the story Leatherwing by Chuck Dixon, with art by Enrique Alcatena. This story transplanted Batman stories to the 17th century and the high seas. He was a pirate with a ship called the Flying Fox, which is a type of bat. We've got two more, and these are the two I'm less sure on. There's one here who I've seen labeled as Nighthawk, but I'm not so sure because Batman was not Nighthawk. Nighthawk was Hannibal Hawks. Now there is a Western Earth. There was an Elseworld story from 1997 called Justice Riders, but Batman wasn't really included in that at that time. And Earth 18, which is what that Earth would be designated, wouldn't really come into being fully elaborated upon until 2015. There is the potential that maybe I missed an outing where he was on the Justice Riders pre-2009. If so, let me know. Or it is also possible this is just a reference to that Earth and that look. It does look fairly close to how Hannibal Hawk, no S, looked in the Robin Annual number 6 when Robin and the Huntress had to take on the Trigger Twins. This was a main verse storyline. But if you know where this is from and you're sitting here going, you fool, this is clearly a reference to insert thing here, please insert thing there. I would like to know. I'm also not sure about this aggressively 90s looking one with the gold Azrael accents. So again, if you know for this one, I've seen it labeled as Solar Batman or Judge Batman, but let me know, and then we can talk about them, especially if their stories are epic. Do you also notice that some of these Batmen were straddling the fence a bit morally? This was an eclectic team, but it was an effective one. The final fight in this episode is less chaotic than the one in part 1. It's just easier to track who is who's hero, who's villain, that kind of thing. And there are some funny moments in this. Special highlight to Black Manta running over and trying to fry Aquaman. There are no children here for him to kill. The odes to Golden Age Batman continue with Owlman pulling a gun. Batman did use a gun in the Golden Age, but extremely briefly. However, because of how the character has evolved and how his aversion to guns has developed and become so intrinsic to the character, it is a shocking thing to see from a modern perspective, and would have been from very early on in the character's history because that very quickly became baked in. It's quite the striking image, and later retellings, such as Batman Year 2, as well as others, would highlight that moment, bringing it forward and making it feel like a far bigger aspect of the character's history than it was during the Golden Age. In fact, by Batman number 4, in either December of 1940 or January of 1941, he was seen telling Robin they didn't kill, and the gun was dropped by Batman number 1 in 1940. The phasing out seems to coincide with Dick Grayson appearing as Robin, probably just another attempt to separate Batman from the Shadow. And before that, it wasn't even like he used them every issue. But again, from a modern perspective, it's that striking image. And then that coupled with the retellings, which continue to be built upon, for example, Caped Crusader also referenced this. It's easy for it to seem like it was this big character moment when originally it wasn't. But it has evolved into being one over time. So it's fascinating. Him using them or choosing not to can be and has been utilized as a very powerful moment. And you do always get the gasp shock value. Batman with a gun. And it's also a very fun reference to pair it with Owlman, as they do here, because it's that equivocation of the idea that it's something that Batman shouldn't or wouldn't do. The way they utilize Owlman in this episode is just very good. Now, of course, thanks to the extra help and the freed heroes, they're able to stop Owlman. And I guess maybe Batman's gonna have to talk to his friends about those plans he had, or at least update them, because now they know.
You know I'll be back somehow to even the score, Batman. And you know I'll take you down every every time.
Batman, after all this, is left with the Joker, and the two almost have a moment.
Bats, based on this little adventure, if you weren't the stalwart hero and I wasn't the homicidal maniac, we could have been friends.
There's a bittersweet element here, as we, the viewer, have now seen that they could have indeed worked together in some capacity in different circumstances, but only on the heroic side, because as one notes, Owlman and Joker did not work together well. Although, potentially, Owlman is Thomas, so that might factor in. So many things to think about. Game Over for Owlman is an excellent episode. Potentially arguably better than part 1, although some of the punch it packs was set up in that part, such as the Joker reveal, so they just work incredibly well together. The references and callbacks in this are extremely clever, leading to moments that feel natural and not like fan service, even though they also are. There's a lot of funny moments, but also urgency and stakes.
I could get used to this hero stuff. Besides, nobody kills my wingman but me.
This episode is up there among the top of this series, and also a strong contender for just one of the best Batman animated episodes out there in general. The way it balances handling the other world, all the characters, the Joker-Batman team-up, all the references. Not one element pulls focus. It doesn't lean into being too dark or lean into being too campy. It's a real masterclass of an episode. But those are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. Do you disagree entirely? Do you think this was mid? Do you think it was bad? If so, I want to hear why. If you know where those Batmen come from, I want to hear that too. Please just put it all down below. I can't wait to chat. And while you're down there, please all YouTube things, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time today to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.